just keep the recording and show to all your customers you want. It's not a problem, as long as you don't publish the whole
Okay, that's
recording
fine.
on YouTube.
Okay, so we'll record it, but we won't publish it to people. I'll tell them that it's not being recorded for that purpose.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. No worries.
Thank
So
you.
let me just, now we'll just let everyone know. Okay, everyone, we are getting started. People are coming into the program. I appreciate everyone's time. My name is Paul Siegel. Stefano Mussoorie is going to be your subject matter expert today with deep knowledge of the strategic design and design thinking world. We will get going shortly. We will be taking questions. It will be muted because currently there are about 50 people registered for the program. Let me just mute Stefano for the moment. But typically what I will do is I will do a 1 to 3 minute introduction, just tell you a little about what StarWeaver does for a living, and then we'll jump right into Stefano's program. So this program, typically it's being recorded for publication. It's now just being recorded for internal use. So this is not going to be available to you afterwards, sorry, but this is some interesting proprietary information that we're not yet at the liberty to do publicly, but I think you should get a very good deep dive into strategic and design thinking. Please give us another minute and then we'll get going with the program. If you do have questions, again, just post them on the right side here. You'll see that you probably got a notice that says something like, please click to give us feedback at the end of the program. The benefit to that is that everyone gets feedback, as well as you get a free access to one of our 5-star courses on Udemy. It does actually look like it is the top of the hour. Thank you everyone for, let me just make sure. Okay, thank you very much for joining us. My name is Paul Siegel from StarWeaver. I appreciate everyone's taking the time today. It is an introduction to strategic design, integrating strategic and design thinking. Stefano Mussoorie is the subject matter expert. He will be conducting the presentation. I will do 1 2-minute introduction into StarWeaver and some of the things that you can hope to get out of our programs in general. StarWeaver is a professional development and education company, as you can tell by the name, and its tagline, Start Education You Can Bank On. We're about education that's predictable, reliable, and much of it is finance related, but it's also related to technology, business skills, and I'll talk about that. Many of our clients are some of the largest institutions in the world. Typically, we do not offer individual consumer-oriented education, that is to say individuals would come to our courses, but we offer them to global clients. We cover 5 major areas. That is to say, cutting-edge technology, business skills, traditional enterprise IT, finance and banking, project management. And this kind of is a program that almost covers all of these areas in the way you look at problems and how you solve them. Our content is live and in person, live online, like we're experiencing now, and there's a library of this extensive amount of courses which you can access through our online learning management system. If you access the learning management system online, it will look something like this. You may have a PowerPoint presentation, you may have a live instructor or recorded instructor like this, and a bunch of resources along the side here, including the content, access to the instructor, practice exercises, test questions, and obviously you can navigate our system. We do have some public courses. There's the URL. It's on Udemy. You can search for my name, Paul Siegel, or any of these content. You will actually get free access to one of these courses just simply by giving us your feedback today, and I'll show you how you do that in a second. We do actually have some programs which you can access directly and online. Just go to StarWeaver Institute and learn more about them. We have a program which is interesting called Agile in Action, which is about practical hands-on skills in Agile that helps you keep sharp. It's private webinars that are done 3 to 4 times a month, plus live discussions to handle problems that you might be addressing in your existing programs. You do also get more access to our our recorded online programs, and you get some exam prep tools and other resources. It's free to anyone who's ever gone through one of our programs, and there's an annual fee otherwise, which is a pretty good value. These are the courses that you can get access to for free as a result of your simply attending this program. All you have to do, look on the right side when you when you've entered. We'll also text this around to SurveyMonkey. Click on it. It takes you 2 minutes to give us feedback. Then select the course at the end that you want, and you'll get access to it for life. Stefano is truly an expert in this field, and I'm really grateful to have him take his time. He's based in Italy. I'll tell you more about that. He's a very global thinker and problem solver, and works with many global institutions as well. So He'll tell you a little about himself, and I'll pass this off to him in 1 second. I do want to tell you that we have upcoming programs. We try to add more as we go, so please check back on our website regularly. You'll see that. This program is the one that's being offered today, Strategic and Design Thinking. There'll be one on machine learning next week. There's one on technical tools, which is quite interesting, on the blockchain, and how do you use them to evaluate what type of technologies you might want to use in implementing. There's a FinTech and a Flash program, which is kind of an interesting survey of all the tools and technologies out there in FinTech these days. Ambitious. There's a CRM program with Microsoft Dynamics coming up, and also Prince 2. Again, we offer these programs on a regular basis. Do come back. If you have any questions at all, please do not hesitate to contact us. We will text this information on the right. The one thing I did fail to mention as I pass this over to Stefano, who will be the presenter, is that if you have questions, please text them on the right part of your screen. Okay, that is important. So we will have less chatter and noise. Stefano, we're waiting for Stefano to come on. He's online. We'll see his screen in a second, and then I'll pass it over to him. Again, this is not being recorded or at least it is being recorded, but not for the purpose of public sharing, which is what we do usually. Stefano, if you share your screen, we'll be ready to go. And again, everyone, please do feel free to ask your questions. Stefano may save them to the end. But don't feel like he's not going to get to them. He will get to every question. Okay, Stefano, can you hear me?
Yes, Paul, thank you very much. Can you see my screen?
Please take over. We cannot see your screen yet.
Oh, let me see. Share. Perfect.
Okay, good to go. Thank you. And again, please, everyone, share your questions, comments, feedback on the right. And when Stefano has a moment, he'll get to them. Take it away, Stefano.
Okay, Paul, thank you very much for the introduction. And let me say that I'm super excited to be here today because strategic design is emerging organically in the work of manager, more as a practice rather than a discipline. And you might ask, what is the difference? The difference is that what I really like about it is that there are managers within an organization that are able to innovate despite the people that are in control of the organization are not really fostering an innovation agenda. What does it mean? It means that is the opportunity, there is a terrific opportunity to democratize innovation. And how do we do that? We are doing that through strategic design. And strategic design really enables manager to integrate the two sides of the brain. The part of the brain that is more rational, what we have used in the last 30 and 40 years in business is defined by strategy and strategic thinking. But at the same time, managers are starting to understand that they have the chance to try something new on a daily basis without the permission from the top management. And we are able to do that through applying a set of very inexpensive project and try to define, oh, is that project really bringing some result in the company? And if it doesn't, well, if it doesn't, we try another one. So in so doing, using design thinking, that is more creative way to think about growth, we are de-risking innovation. And we are making it a daily job in the work of managers. Okay, so let me give you a very quick introduction on the different subjects that we are going to see in this webinar. Well, first of all, let me introduce myself a little bit more in depth, where I come from and how did I became a design strategy. After that, let me introduce the difference between conventional strategic thinking theories and theories that are emerging in business, which I define related to the aspect of design and design thinking. After that, let me give you a very quick introduction on the difference between incremental and disruptive innovation. Now, let me say that I believe that any manager, to some extent, understand what is the difference between incremental and disruptive innovation. But what I want to do in this webinar is really digging and try to understand what are the implications in the way that we as managers behave when we are just incrementally innovative and when rather we try to disrupt the industry in which we operate. Okay, after that, we are going to look very briefly at the different set of tools that we can use when we think strategically, rationally, and the tools that are coming from designers. A set of tools that up to now managers didn't even consider in their arsenals because they believe, oh, no, prototyping, yeah, I understand what is prototyping, but they don't really use the tools of prototyping properly. So let's explore the difference between the two different kinds of tools and also the mindset required in order to use those tools properly. And let me close this webinar with a quick word on project management. And the reason why I want to close this webinar focusing on project management is because when we do rational and strategic thinking, it's easy to make a plan. In fact, we call it business plan, and that we have been doing that for ages. What is really difficult is how we can plan creativity. And that is always the observation that I receive when I pitch myself to an organization, say, but is that the creative side of an organization can be that efficient? And what I've been doing the last few years is try to demonstrate and to experiment how to make that creativity part as efficient as the rational part. Now, we are not there completely. I think by nature are two different ways to think about business, but I think there is a lot of space for improvement in many companies on how to make that creativity side of the business that is necessary a little bit more efficient. And later on, we close the webinar to see try to answer questions that will come up during the webinar. So let's get started with Stefano. Well, my name is Stefano Mussoorie, and I believe that any name tells a story. And my story is that I come from the north of Italy, and my city is Modena. Now, Modena is famous all over the world for a few different things. For example, Parmesan. So the food industry is very developed there. The balsamic vinegar. Also, we are famous all around the world for the best restaurants in Modena. It's restaurants Bottura. But what I want to focus today on particularly what is going on in my city, is the manufacturing industry, particularly the automotive industry. Why the automotive industry? Because I think, with a little bit of looking back in my life, that had an impact on the reason why I became eventually a design strategist. I remember in school during the lunch break, instead of actually having a lunch break, we spent half an hour looking at the different motorbike of the different students, say, which is the motorbike that is not only the fastest motorbike, but the one that is well designed. So we were matching. We didn't know at that time. We were matching the engineering side of a motorbike. This is only small motorbike, the motorbike that you drive when you are 14, which the design side. But be careful, design is not only the way that a motorbike or an object looks like, but actually goes beyond that. Is okay the way that it looks like, but is also the usability. So when we speak about design in business, is not only the way that the appearance of an object, but rather how does that object make you feel? And that, let me say that Italia maybe are not famous around the world to be superly efficient, but I think it's one of those countries where there is a tremendous effort in connecting the mechanical side of things, the specs of a product with its usability. And I think in the long term, set me on a trajectory to become a design strategist, which means, in few words, connecting the rationality of the competitive advantage of a company to the usability of the product that the company sells. Okay, but in my late 20s, after my graduation, I moved to Dublin, Ireland, and here in Dublin, there is a completely different economy that is a service economy, and I always had a passion in training and teaching. And because most of my customers are not actually based in Dublin or necessarily in Italy, I need to embrace the power of online, of the web, in order to reach customers that otherwise I would never be able to reach. So I define myself, given my past, both a design strategist, but also an online corporate trainer. Okay, so that hopefully give you a little bit of understanding of where I come from, why I'm so passionate of connecting the characteristic of a product or a service with usability, but also at the same time how I like to facilitate those concepts of strategic design in companies. And now we are ready, I suppose, to start with the big concept. What is the difference between strategy or strategic thinking and design thinking? Okay, so let's get a quick look at the origin of strategy or strategic thinking. And we start asking ourselves the question, when did strategy or strategic thinking really emerge? And the need for strategy, for companies to develop a strategy, historically really started to emerge after the Second World War. And say, why after the Second World War? Well, simply for the reason that was the first time in history that corporations start to experience an increasing level of competition in many industries. Before, there was infinite demand because the war created this demand for supplies. And later on, after the Second World War, everything cooled down. So big corporations start to feel, oh, well, I need to understand where should I compete in my industry. And the field of strategic thinking started to be a little bit more organized when academic professor came together and kind of invented a set of framework that enabled companies to think strategically. And guess what? Because this theory, this framework, come from academia, are very rational. And let's digress here very quickly on rational thinking. Rational thinking starts with a very good understanding of what the problem is. So in a company, the problem is, there is an increasing level of competition. And then after that, everybody in a company understands the problem, we come up with a set of possible solutions that we can embrace in order to solve that problem. And then we converge our decision towards the solution that fit best the condition of the company and the problem. So you can see it's very linear, it's a convergent process. And the way that happened really in companies is that there was the need to understand, okay, if I need to compete sustainably, and I have this set of rational frameworks that we can use, we need to define, first of all, where are we framing that problem. So we start to understand competition, and with the notion of industry. Industry is the best environment that we can use in order to understand how competition really works. And in fact, we have the industry analysis that enables us to understand who are our direct competitors, but also what is the bargaining power of suppliers and buyers, and how are they affecting the profitability of the industry. And also we have the new product and service that can enter the industry and in a way disrupt the industry where we are. But also take a look at the substitute products and services that can really kind of diminish the profitability of the industry. But basically, when we do strategic thinking, we focus on competition. One important point that I want to make here is that when we converge our thinking, when we are rationals as managers, our thinking is very static. Let's say, what does it mean static? It means that we take a snapshot of what is going on in the industry, and based on the set of data that we are able to generate with that snapshot, well, we base our decision. So for example, there are 3 competitors in that part of the industry, 3 competitors, we decide to compete in that part of the industry because it's less exposed to the competitive forces. And that is very appropriate when we do strategic thinking, because we use data from the past. And then leads us towards the idea then, well, if we need to grow our company, are the data that we generated looking at the past sufficient to frame the future? And let me tell you that that is no longer true. That would be true if there is no other competitors, if industries are static. But we all know that the world in which we live in is a dynamic world. Things are changing. New technologies are emerging that disrupt industries every single day. So while strategic thinking, rational thinking provides us with hints on where we should go, which positioning we should aim in order to innovate, it doesn't tell you how. It doesn't tell us how, what we have to do. So basically, I see all the time managers that do very rational thinking and all of a sudden come to someone that is defining himself as creative and say, well, listen, I have all the data, but I don't know how to start a new growth initiative within my organization. I know that I should lead toward that direction in my industry, but I don't know really how. So let's say that in the last 5 to 10 years, there is a new way of thinking, a new methodologies that business is acquiring from designer that enables us to be creative. And let me tell you the big difference here. The big difference is that even before coming up with the solution of the problem, converging, do you remember strategic thinking and rational thinking converge our thinking towards a possible solution? Design starts with trying to understand what is the real problem in there that we want to solve. So we use design thinking in order to understand, I want to grow my organization and I want to serve a customer, okay, or a set of customers. Now, design thinking is useful because it enables you to understand, first of all, to better understand what is the problem that the customer is facing. Even before running into the solution, we start to understand, okay, what is the problem, the real problem that the customer is facing? And the problem here is that the customer is not able to tell you. Because if the customer is able to tell you what the problem is, and you start a growth initiative trying to satisfy that particular needs, well, you are already competing head to head with your competitors in order to solve that problem. So the power of design and what design tries to do is, first of all, diverging our thinking and try to come up with different possibility about the problem. The reason why design is very useful in doing this is because what we are trying to do with design is to dig into the experience of our customer and try to define a set of needs that our customer is not able to tell us about. Why we want to do that? Because if we start a growth initiative, try to satisfy a need that is not only unmet, but is unarticulated, then we have the time to create possible solution, prototype, different solution, and then eventually, yes, create a solution for that problem that we are able to structure well along the process. Okay, so is a process. There are different tools in design, but enables us to dig into the customer problems and life and trying to understand, okay, I believe that the problem is this. But in reality, the problem can be multifaceted. And by starting a design agenda within an organization, we are enabling a possible understanding of different problems that the customer has. Okay. Now, while strategic and rational thinking is industry-centered, we take a snapshot of what is going on in the industry. But when we think creatively, we don't focus necessarily only in our industry, but rather is cross-industry and sectors. Many companies were able to innovate because they look at other industries, how companies in different industries were able to innovate, and they use that as a model. Inspiration, when we are creative, comes in many different shapes and forms. It's not only rational converging, but rather start up with the question, what if everything was possible? If anything was possible, okay? And basically, all of this leads us to the main difference. When we think strategically, there is no need for reframing. We understand the problem, we see the possible solution, and we pick the solution that is more appropriate for the problem. In design, we don't know exactly what the problem is. Okay, so our job is really to reframing, to change the way that we think about the customer needs. But also, we can also do the same with the processes. We can change our understanding of how we think about our manufacturing process. And later on, we will see example of this. Okay, so why strategic thinking, rational thinking? Tell us. Well, you should move in that part of the industry in order to innovate. Design and design thinking provides us with a new perspective on how to start a growth initiative. Okay? Okay, so after having hopefully clarified some differences between rational thinking, strategic thinking, and creative thinking or design thinking, let's begin on the implication for management when management try to innovate incrementally or management is trying to disrupt an industry. As I said before, I believe there is a general understanding of this, but I want really to dig deep on the implication for management. And now let me give an example of what I define incremental innovation. When I go to do some grocery shop, in many packaging, doesn't matter exactly what the product is, I can see most of the time new and improved. So what is that company actually trying to say to me? Well, the company maybe day one is selling a good product. And then all of a sudden a new competitor or a substitute product is entering and is attacking that company. So company, after a while, need to come up with a better version of the original product. Now, it's not a different product, it is likely more better version. Now, the question is, what does it mean better? Better from the point of view of the customer can also be cheap. Oh, you know what? They cut down the cost of that particular product 20%. Because the only thing that your customer really wants is a better version of the status quo. So your product in time two is not a different product. It's just a better version for the customer of that product. Okay? And then we look that dynamically. After a while, another competitors come in and is able to slash the price again, or is able to create somehow more value for your customer, and you are losing, shares. What's happening? You come up with a new and improved version of the product, just like the example at the grocery store. And let me tell you that this doesn't require you to be very creative, because you are just incrementally, rationally adding value to your product. And that is a classic example of incremental innovation. And now the implication, I mentioned before, what are the implications for management? How is a manager that is incrementally innovating behaving? And let me tell you that the best way that I had to visualize this is through the journey of a hiker. A hiker would step up after step in order to reach the top of the mountain. And the way that really happens within an organization is when managers are adopting a set of best practices and technologies that are emerging in their industry, and they internalize them to their organization. Okay? And let me tell you that incremental innovation is essential for the competitive advantage of any organization. We need to do it. There is nothing wrong with it. But there are two main limits to incremental innovation. The first limit is that one day or another, you will reach the top of the mountain. And let me give you a very simple example that I always use in order to kind of communicate the message of incremental innovation. And this relates to a product. The company, the razor company, Gillette, is all around the world. Every time they experience a drop, possibly because there is a competitor coming in, substitute product or whatever, you know what they do? They add a blade to their razors. Now, I believe we reached 5 blades already in a Gillette razor. So the real problem, the Gillette experience, is not adding the 6th blade. It's not an engineering problem. The problem of Gillette is a creative problem. How can we enable people like Stefano, that is pretty much bald, to shave without using a razor? Because shaving with a razor, you need to is a messy job. So if there was, as a consumer, so if there was another way that I don't know myself, because it's not my job as a consumer to be creative, but if there is another way that enabled me to shave on an everyday basis without all the mess that is required to shave nowadays, I would be very happy to pay for that product. So you can see one nail or another one, you will reach the end. You don't need to add the 6th blade. You will reach the end of the possibility that you have to innovate given your current product. Okay. And the other problem that a company experience by competing, by only incrementally innovate, is that it's not sustainable. They say, what does it mean? It means that if you are competing, and let me be a strategist here, and I'm more a strategy than a designer, but here the point that I want to make here is that if you are just competing by acquiring the set of the best practices that are emerging in your industry, but let me push this a little bit forward. Even if you invent the new practice, you are not acquiring that from the industry, you invent the best practice. Well, one day or another one, with the power of reversing engineering, your very next competitor can do exactly the same, can acquire your practice, the new practice that you have adopted. So while in a way you are adding more value for your customer, you're not able to capture that value, the extra value. Why? Because competition in that industry becomes a time game. Who is the first in the industry adopting that new technology or that new best practice? You see, there is the need in management to match this kind of incremental innovation approach, creating a better version of an already existing product or service with what I call disruptive innovation. And what is disruptive innovation? Well, disruptive innovation differs from incremental innovation because in time 2, you don't have a better version of the product that you did in time 1, you created in time 1. But you have a completely different product. And the image that I've used, because visualization is the essence of design, you see that the product in time 2 on the right-hand side of the screen is kind of a rough version of the product. It's not finished. It's something that adds value to a customer, but not as the old product did. Why is that? Because when we start to embrace design thinking, we are starting prototyping. The product that we produce in time 2, that is a different product, is just a little bit more than a new idea. But what is the trick here? Is that coming up with that product requires us to shift our understanding of the customer product, or the customer needs. And then only when we shift the perception of the need of the customer, then opens up new opportunity for value creation. But let's see the implication of this for management. If you remember, when we were speaking about incremental innovation, was pretty much like climbing a mountain. When we behave like those managers that want to disrupt the industry, well, imagine we reach the top of the mountain, and what we have to do is we parachute ourselves into the unknown. And in fact, creativity that is required in order to do this is possibly the biggest challenge we face in management in the 21st century. In the 20th century was efficiency. How can I become more efficient in my manufacturing plans? Okay, cutting costs. The real challenge that we faced, remember Gillette? It's not adding the sixth blade, but rather how can I come up with a new solution for a need of the customer? Okay. But now let me show you two different but real examples on how managers were forced to embrace disrupting innovation. And the first example that I want to use here is thinking about Philips in between the 60s and the 70s. Now, when I say Philips, most of us think about home appliances like microwave oven, a TV set, a radio. And imagine you are Philips during the 60s and the 70s when new competitors are entering the industry, your industry, with a fraction of the price, and these competitors are mostly from Asian countries. And then what do? What has management done up to now? They use rational thinking, strategic thinking. Well, let me tell you that the result of that rational thinking, you say, well, you know what, unfortunately, there are troubles here because we can't sustainably compete with them. They are able, for the situation under which they operate in those countries, you will never be able to compete with them sustainably. So Philips, in order to stay alive, was forced to think creatively about their manufacturing plans. So the question the management asked themselves, they say, oh, listen, there is not much we can do about that, about competing in the home appliances. They didn't leave, they didn't exit the industry, they still manufacturing those home appliances. But the growth today that Philips is experiencing is not through manufacturing home appliances, but rather they jumped into a new industry, healthcare. And you say, well, healthcare, what? How is healthcare connected with home appliances? And that is where creativity actually takes place. If you think as an engineer, rationally, at the way that a microwave oven is assembled, the parts that are required to manufacture a microwave oven, and the parts that are required in order to create an incubator for premature babies are not too different. I mean, there is the generation of heat at the bottom of the product, and obviously it's a different type of heat. And in one, there is the space for the food on the top, and in the other one, we have the baby. Now, what is the barrier to creativity? What was the barrier that the management of Philips need to overcome? Is that when we think about a microwave oven in our kitchens at home, is a safe environment with our family, happy time together. And when we think about an incubator for premature baby, is an hospital with a lot of problems, and our brain doesn't want to connect it to. There is a disconnection in there. But the engineers and the designer within Philips were able to do that because eventually they were able to understand, to overcome this gap between a situation at home and the situation in the hospital. And you see, creativity is not something that happens rationally. It's not the more you think about it, the more you creative you become. But it's something that you need to be inspired to do. It's something that needs to happen within a company because somebody really wants to make it happen. Because there is a manager that carries on an agenda of innovation, okay? And doesn't necessarily need to come from the top, to reign from the top. We need to innovate. And the real lesson that I've learned being in different organizations, working with them, is that many times, the more the top of the organization forces their employees to be innovative, the less innovation happens. But rather, when the people within an organization are inspired to innovate, is when really this changing perception really happens. But now this was an example of how we can apply, how Philips was able to apply creativity in order to change, in a way, the the processes required in order to manufacture a product. But now look externally. And how can we use disruptive innovation in order to serve our customer or a new set of customers? And that is very intriguing. And let me explain here the difference between unarticulated or unserved customer need. Let me say unserved or unmet, probably is a better definition. Let me say that if you start a growth initiative, try to serve an unmet customer need, as I said already, you are starting a growth initiative already competing head-to-head with your competitors. Okay? So what is an unmet customer need? Is a need that everyone of your competitors know that is there, but nobody is able to come up with a solution just yet. And you might be wanting to start a growth initiative, get your engineering team together in order to solve that problem. Okay? But what strategic design is well suited to solve is not actually an unmet customer need, but rather is an unarticulated customer need. An unarticulated customer needs is a need that your customer has already, but is not able to tell you about it. Why? Because again, it's not the job of the customer telling you what they want. Okay, they are not able to foresee that yet. And the example that I use here all the time is a very simple example. If Harry Ford asked to the potential customer of his, what do you want? The customer would have said, I want a faster horse. That explains exactly how Harry Ford couldn't borrow the creativity of the user, but needed to develop in itself this understanding, this insight, then say, oh, well, you know what, we can come up with a new concept. Now, possibly Henry Ford didn't have the concept all worked out day one, but because he started up to the challenge, then eventually, through different prototyping, a lot of mistake, was able to come up with a completely different solution that was disruptive. Okay, so this hopefully explain us the difference between the incremental and disrupting innovation. And let me close this second part of the webinar making a very important point. We need in management both way to innovate. We need to be incrementally innovating, and we need to be able to disrupt our industry. It's not the one is better than the other one, but we need to understand what the new growth initiative that we are undertaking now. What are we trying to do here? Are we trying just to create a better version of the product? Or we are trying to come up with a new product for our current set of customers or new customers, okay? And I think many times when I participate to brainstorming session, the problem is not that brainstorming is wrong, but we have half of the people in the room that are incrementally, they kind of are incrementally thinking. So all the time that they say something is a better version of the status quo. And you have the creative people in the room that say, actually, you know what, we really need to create a new product. And let me be honest with you. I work with different companies, big companies, but also with some startups. And my job, the difficult part of my work, yes, is bringing knowledge. I bring new perspective on how a company embraces innovation. But the real challenge that I face is creating a conversation between two types of people that don't want to talk to each other. Because I say, oh, I don't want even to talk to that person because it has a completely different mindset. So overcoming this difference in the way that we think is essential in starting a growth initiative and a strategic design agenda within organization. Okay, so let's move towards the third point. So we have seen kind of the difference between strategic and design thinking, rational and creative. We have seen the different mindset and the different implication for management that wants to incrementally innovate and other type of management that want to disrupt their industry. And now the central part of the webinar. We need to try to spend a little bit of time understanding what are the tools that we have been using up to now in order to rationally think about how to compete in our industry. And another set of tools that enable to think about design, about coming up with that disrupting innovation, with that new opportunity to innovate sustainably. Okay, so let's get started with the traditional tools that we use in business that we call the strategy tools. As I said at the beginning of the webinar, the tools that we use in strategy that emerged in the 70s are all rational and analytical. In fact, if you take those tools, are named industry analysis, value chain analysis, competitor analysis, segmentation analysis, and positioning analysis. For sure, all these tools were created in academia. Okay, so let's get started very quickly with industry analysis. What we try to do when we run an analysis of our industry, okay, we are trying to understand what are the forces at play in an industry. Okay, what are the forces that are squeezing the profitability of the industry? Okay, now let me tell you that we can't even speak about strategic design if we don't understand the environment in which we operate. We need to be sure that we are able to understand who are our direct competitors, who are the competitors that are not direct competitors, but that can potentially enter the industry, therefore squeezing the profitability of the industry. What are the other companies that, in a way, are substitutes that can provide value for the set of customers that the industry is going after? And later on, obviously, we need to understand how new technologies are affecting or improving the work of our suppliers and buyers, and how they are changing the negotiation power with the company in the industry. But let's say that we understand our industry. We are running an industry analysis, so we have a good understanding of the dynamics of where the industry is going. Now, this is the kind of understanding the environment where a company is operating. At the same time, if we want to be strategic, we need to know what are the set of activities that we have to develop in order to serve the customer. Okay, so we use the value chain. The value chain is a framework that enables us to understand what type of strategy are we embracing, either a low-cost strategy or a differentiation strategy. Okay, and we have a company here in Dublin, Ireland, that is famous because is an airline, Ryanair, brings you all around Europe for about 30 quid. Okay, 30 euros, it can go to Italy, Spain, or whatever. Why is Ryanair able to bring you from Dublin to Spain with 30 euros? Because they have developed a set of activities that enable the company to create a low-cost strategy. Okay, so they develop a set of activities in their value chain that push the companies toward being low cost. Now, as I mentioned before, you can have a completely different set of activities in your value chain. For example, take companies like Ferrari, where I come from, Modena. They actually develop a completely different strategy, that is differentiation. And let me tell you that if you go to the factory, and actually I advise you to go, there is a beautiful museum in there, you start to understand that the real cost of that car is not really the part that still and making the part of Ferrari, and Ferrari outsourced that part of the job. Okay, and Ferrari doesn't have any problem with that, because they know that they are able to charge extra in order to cover that process, those expenses. So the value chain is useful because tell us, how are we competing? And tell you, many companies are not able to develop competitive advantage because part of the company believes they are developing a low-cost strategy, and the other part of the company want to really differentiate. So creating that alignment is necessary in order to be strategic, to compete strategically in an industry. And later on, there is another tool that is the competitor analysis. When we do a competitor analysis, well, enables us to develop an understanding of each of our major competitor at a time. And what I would suggest to any companies is really developing a competitor intelligence system in order to monitor the movement of each single competitor. But most of all, what I find fascinating is the concept that you can have either a bad competitor in your industry or a good competitor. And let me tell you that many times say, well, all competitors are bad. But the reality is that competition in an industry is not necessarily zero sum. What does it mean? It means that you can have competitors that don't come after your customer. They are happy to compete in that part of the industry, and they are good competitors. You have other competitors that are more aggressive, and they try to enter your market share. And your ability to understand who is a good competitor and bad competitor really create a lot of intelligence within your organization. Another tool that belongs to the strategy tools is our ability to segment the customer in the industry. Okay, and that, let me say, that is the one that is closest to the understanding of design and design thinking, because it's when you find a new way to segment your customer that actually you are opening up new possibility for new value creation within your industry. And the last tool that I would say belongs to the strategy toolkit is the positioning analysis. Well, what is the difference between positioning and competitor? What is being worked out in academia is that one thing is to try to study each of your competitor independently, okay? And another thing is try to group competitors in a cluster of competitors that are trying to serve the same set of customer. And then what we are trying to do with positioning, try to understand how competition works within that group of companies and how might be that group is moving within the organization. Okay, so having explained very quickly the different tools that we have as a strategy toolkit, well, let me tell you that all of this might generate some understanding, and definitely will generate some understanding of your industry, what is going on, the dynamics. So it's not necessarily static, like I said at the beginning of the presentation. But the reality is that all this analysis is based on the real data that you already have, that you are able to collect within your industry. Okay, and one day you are forced, like Philips, to innovate. Otherwise, there is no space to compete in your industry. That might be an extreme case, but I'm telling you that I've seen more companies than what you would believe that are forced. In fact, many companies come to me when they are desperate, say, we did all the rational analysis, and all of a sudden we are left short. We don't know exactly what we have to do. And then is when we need to embrace a set of tools, a toolkit, that up to now we're left to the designer, to the artist, to the crazy people that are able to come up with that shift in perception. To remember, from home appliances to the healthcare sector, that is not really handy to do with the rational brain. Actually, can't be done. You will never be able to understand that you need to enter healthcare because you do an industry analysis. Industry analysis say, oh, listen, the situation is that you should compete there. It doesn't tell you need to leave your industry and enter another one. Okay, so let's see, what is the work that those design tool really enables us to do? Well, first of all, enables us to start from the concept and the research that we have done in our strategic thinking, for example, the value chain, and understanding, okay, given these processes, how can I serve a different set of customers if my industry is becoming too competitive? Okay, and then it enables us not only on where we should go, but rather the how. Okay, provides us with that new opportunities. It projects new opportunities on how to create value for a different set of customers. Okay, so it works internally regarding our product and our processes, but also we can use design tools in order to understand those unarticulated customer needs. You remember the difference between unarticulated and unmet. We want really to dig in and start to understand what are the unarticulated customer needs. And now let me give you 3 examples of 3 tools that I use all the time when working with company. Well, the first tool that I use all the time is the tool of visualization. Why visualization is so important in design thinking, and generating new growth? Well, because while we are doing, for example, a strategic analysis, we use data, we use numbers, and we use words. Okay. The problem with that is that numbers and words resonate differently in different heads, in different minds. Different culture interpret numbers and letters in different ways. So when we try to jump into the unknown, try to disrupt an industry, there is the need to align everyone that is working in that team and try to make sure that everyone understands exactly where we are in the process. So on the left side of the left-hand side of the screen, you can see that there is a map that charts out what are the stages of the design process. And the interesting power of visualization, that we use visualization within each step. So when we brainstorm and we try to come up with new ideas for value creation, we not only we don't write a business plan for a new idea, but rather we sketch that idea. And guess what? I have assisted many times at this process. Somebody within the team start to sketch an idea. And because the idea is visual, enables another one in the team to continue the drawing, that sketch, adding a new interpretation of that shape that was formed by one person. And you start to see visualization bring a team of people that might coming from different culture, different interpretation of numbers and words, but visualization align a team. And that is a huge contribution of design and design thinking. When we need to come up with the second step, a concept development, we don't straight away create a 3D version of our product, but rather we create a better sketch of the idea phase, and we try to bring different concepts together in a prototype. And then when we have a 2D or 3D prototype, we really try to go out and test that with some of our customers. So the ability of bringing a team together by visualizing not only the process, but the different steps of the project, I believe is a huge contribution when it comes to really start a new growth initiative within an organization. Make sure that everybody is aware of exactly what is going on, what are the problems that we are trying to solve, and create that alignment that most of the time is lacking within organization. The second tool that I want to show here is it really enables us to think about our customer in a completely different way that we would have done if thinking strategically or rationally. And I want to start to showing you the power of the persona, customer persona, by asking you a question. If I ask you, can you think about your colleagues? Maybe you are working in an office with 5 or 6 colleagues. So can you think about each one of them independently? You can. The simple reason, because our brain is able to manage 6 or 7 pieces of information at the same time. You deal with them every day. You like some of them, it's like some of the other one. But basically, you know each one of them even before they do something. You know that they are going to do that because you are in touch with them every day, and your brain is able to think about 5 or 6 people at the same time. Now, if I ask this question, can you think about your customer all at once? Can you think about 200 customers at the same time? You can't. For the simple reason that we don't have enough brain power to think about all of them independently. So if we want to create value for customers, we need to understand a limited set of customers that enable us to think about them beyond the conventional measurement that we use up to now. So what we do, we create personas. And what is a persona? Persona is a fictional character that embeds the characteristic of a set of customers, okay? And those characteristics and data, are real characteristic. And the reason why we kind of boil down all our customers to 5 or 6 different personas is that enables us to think at each personas independently, okay? And what we are trying to do here is coming up with a short description of this persona. We try to understand some of the conventional demographic measurement, like for example, where is located, what is the average income. But then, remember, we need to try to define a set of unarticulated customer needs. And in order to do that, we need to dig deeper in their life and try to understand what is their lifestyle, what is their belief system. Okay, this is a set of measurements that are called ethnographic and really related to the study and the culture of people. And obviously, we are shifting here from quantitative data to what I call qualitative. So we start with a very limited set of fictional characters and we study them in depth, and then we try to understand, given the lifestyle, given the belief system of that particular customer, what are the possible pain that that person is experiencing, okay? And that really is powerful because it enables us to see these fictional characters in the face. In fact, most of the time, we create a picture. We place a face to that fictional character that, again, is fictional, is not real, but enables us to think about it on a different level. And the last tool that I want to share here is what I call the journey mapping. Is the customer journey mapping. For each persona, fictional characters that we create, we chart down the emotional ups and downs that that particular customer faces when it's going through a process. So in the left side, we have a vertical axis, and in there we chart the emotional, the positive emotional and the negative emotional. And in the horizontal line is basically a timeline. Now, the difficult part of the journey mapping is really try to understand what are the emotional touching point that the customer experience when he's performing a particular action. And here, just to make the process very easy, I try to chart down the experience of a customer when he's purchasing a product at the shopping center. And guess what? The only positive emotional stage is the purchase stage, when finally the product touches and is able to grab the product that wanted. All the rest is pretty much negative. Well, there is when he's going back to the car, there's still a little bit in positive, but definitely when the customer needs to leave and possibly is on the phone with the friend, say, or the family, I just purchased that, and is in the traffic is not the best. And that explains very quickly why online shopping is so successful, because it takes away all the negative of the experience of purchasing the product and leave just with the positive. Now, what we do, we need to consider that when we do design thinking or creative thinking, we are not necessarily right. What we are trying to do here is for each stage, from when the customer drives to the store to when he leaves, we try to come up with a set of possible observations on how to reduce the negative impact, the negative emotion, and try to boost the positive emotion. And you can see here is not scientific. It's not necessarily scientific, but what this process enables us to do is shifting the perception from being the manufacturer of the product to really to be somebody that is trying to buy or to purchase or to make a certain task with that particular process or product. Okay, so I hope that these three examples enable us to see the difference between the strategy and the design tools. The strategy being very rational, very analytical, and the design tool being very oriented towards defining a set of needs that the customer is not able to tell us about. And we can only do that by shifting our perception from being a manufacturer to be a customer. Now, the last point that I want to make here in wrapping up this webinar is speaking about, okay, you show me the difference between strategy and design, incremental and disrupting innovation, and the different tools that we can use. Now, it's possible to wrap that all of this in a project management tool, in something that one of our team within our organization can really use in order to create more value for the customer. Something that we can use in order to create a new growth initiative within our organization, but also being able to monitor the progress. So that team can go back to their boss and say, listen, we are heading somewhere here. It's not just generating different perspective, it's not just coming up with different solutions, it's just not expanding the possibilities, but rather is monitoring a process that might bring new value for the customer. And the way that I do that, I experiment this different times, I reiterated this, is I use the concept of Kanban, okay, that was invented at Toyota in order to improve efficiencies, and I apply this within the strategic design process, okay? Now, the image that you see in the screen is actually the process that is developed in University of Virginia in terms of creating a new design initiative, okay? Now, I was mentoring for the University of Virginia, and this process, I can say that is working. But what was missing was really the ability to see the different tasks that a team of people need to perform over time in order to making sure that that growth initiative was going somewhere. So, for example, the first set of tasks in any design process is coming up with a design brief, okay? Within that particular set of tasks, there are different tasks and subtasks. So, for example, the design brief start with performing some basic research, okay? The power of applying the canvas is that we can zoom in under the research tab, under that particular task, and we are able to see, okay, the objective of performing a research is that we want to learn more about unmet customer needs, okay? And then we are able to decide who within our team is responsible for that particular project and who is able to follow. Even if you're not responsible, it's good to know that somebody in your team is working towards that particular task. And the power of this is that we can keep the creativity of the design process with those templates, with those personas. So for each task, that basically what is the canvas doing here? Is creating an artificial linearity to the process of creativity, of innovation, that is not necessarily linear by itself, because is divergent, it's not convergent. But by using the canvas process, we enable people, teams of people working in different branches of the company to come together and to be informed on how the process is going, who is responsible for each task, and what should be the deadline for each task. Okay? And that, I suppose, in a way, enables us to make that process of innovation not only linear, but also de-risk the process of creating more value for the customer. Why? Because we are prototyping, we are testing, even before investing in that particular product. Okay? And then when we have tested and we have enough user cases that testify that there is the demand for a prototype, then we pitch our management and say, listen, we have a set of customers that are nearly ready to buy, can we invest in that opportunity for growth? And then is when we are really generating new possibilities for value creation of the organization. Okay, so let me wrap up very quickly. We started understanding the difference between strategy and design, strategy being rational and design to be creative. We have seen the consequences, the implication for management when we try to incrementally innovate, to create a better version of the current product or service, or when we want to disrupt. And we have seen the example of Philips that was forced to disrupt the industry because there was not much left to do in the home appliance industry. And then we have seen the two different set of tools that we can use in strategy, like the value chain, the industry analysis, that provide us with the data necessary to understand how is the industry doing. Okay, what are the activities that we need to perform in order to compete with a differentiation strategy or low-cost strategy? And then we've seen the tools, or the toolkit that we are acquiring as managers from designer that actually enables us to understand the customer on a deeper level, not only by understanding the demographics, but rather to understand what is their lifestyle, what is their belief system, what is the set of problems that affect the customer. And then we wrap this up with an understanding of how we can make this process of strategic design linear within an organization, and how a team can come together and experiment new and prototype possible solution. Okay, so let me conclude very quickly saying that I'm glad to see many organizations that strategic design is emerging again as a practice organically in the work of managers. In some organizations, I have to say that there are managers that are doing this process of strategic design organically. Okay, I see many other organizations that don't even get started with the process of strategic design or design thinking. So my job is really to facilitate an agenda within an organization to think more strategically, but also giving a spin of design in the way that they think about new value creation. And it's only by combining rational and strategic thinking, that rational and design thinking, that enables us, yes, to keep our innovation going incrementally, but at the same time, give us the opportunity to disrupt our industry. And then let me close say that I think that the source of competitive advantage of any organization is shifting from just acquiring the latest best practices, acquiring the new technology, to the ability of everyone within an organization to develop that ability to shift the perception about the processes that the company is performing, about the product and the value that the product add to the customer, but also the perception of the customer itself. And that, I think, is the biggest challenge that we face now as managers, is not really that incremental thinking that I believe many organizations are very good at, but rather how to embrace creativity and use that creativity in order to come up with new possibility for value creation. So thank you very much indeed, and let me see if there is any question.
Stefano, there's no questions that have come in so far, but everyone, I believe we've gone over a little bit. It's been an excellent program, lots of cover material. I would actually ask you all both to give us your feedback, and also in the survey that's at the right link in the chat, if you can give us some further ideas. Stefano has done a prior very similarly quality design thinking webinar. If you have interest for others, and again, I always say take your own work experience, apply that, tell us what you need to do in the design thinking world, or in this subject in case this is design thinking, send it to us, and then we can organize another webinar around that.
And with that, I really appreciate everyone's time. Stefano, once again, a fantastic program. Again, everyone, please check back for our programs and do give us feedback because, again, you'll get a free access to one of our 5-star courses. They're between 4 and 24 hours long, chunked into pieces. Again, Stefano, wonderful program. Everyone, have a great day. And Stefano, thanks a million again.
Thank you very much.